A 12-year-old girl disappeared while doing something that should have taken only minutes, looking for her sisters at the park. Hours later, her body was discovered beneath a bridge. What happened between those two moments would become a mystery that shocked an entire community. Stay tuned. March 26, 1986. Tacoma, Washington. It is almost midnight. A search dog pulls hard on its leash. It drags its handler off the trail, into a gulch below a bridge. The dog stops. The handler shines a light forward. A girl is lying on her back. Her head is turned to one side. She is 12 years old. 8 hours earlier, she rode her bike home. She made sandwiches for her little sisters. She carried them back to the park. She set the bag on a picnic table. She went to find her sisters. She never came back. Her name was Michella Welch. It would take 32 years to learn who killed her. It would take a napkin and a stranger's ancestry test. Kindly tell us in the comment section where you're watching from. Also subscribe as we go deep into this story. Here is the idea that drives this whole case. For 30 years, investigators believed one thing. One killer took two girls, Michella Welch in March, Jennifer Bastian in August. Both young, both in North Tacoma parks, both on bicycles. That belief was never proven. It was just assumed. And that assumption became a filter. Every tip had to pass through it. Every suspect had to fit both murders at once. If a man looked guilty for one crime but had an alibi for the other, he got crossed off the list. For 3 decades, detectives solved a puzzle with an extra piece jammed in, a piece that didn't belong. In 2013, a DNA test tore that idea apart. 2 different men, 2 separate killers, 3 miles apart, 5 months apart, total strangers to each other. The moment that theory broke, the real investigation could finally begin. This is a story about a wrong idea, an idea that lasted 30 years, and about what happens when science finally catches up, because the man who broke this case left his DNA on a piece of paper at breakfast, without knowing anyone was watching. To understand what was taken, you have to understand who Michella Welch was. She lived on North Oak Street in Tacoma. She was the oldest of 3 sisters. Her mother, Barbara, raised the girls alone. Their father had left the family. In a house like that, someone grows up fast. In this house, that someone was Michella. She wasn't the one people looked after. She was the helper, the one who noticed things first, the one who filled the gaps. By early 1986, life was finally getting steady. Barbara had bought the house on North Oak Street. She had steady work. She signed all 3 girls up for piano lessons. Small things, but for a single mother rebuilding a life, they were real victories. Piano lessons were every Wednesday afternoon. The studio sat right across from Puget Park. March 26th was spring break. No school that week. Barbara had to work, so she gave the girls a simple plan. Spend the morning at the park, then walk across the street for piano lessons. Around 10 that morning, 3 sisters arrived at the park. Michella, middle sister Angela, youngest sister Nicole. At some point, Angela and Nicole left. They went to find a restroom nearby. Michella rode her bike home alone. She made lunch for everyone, sandwiches, wrapped up in a paper bag. She rode back to the park, carrying them. A classmate, 13 years old, was also at the park. Years later, he told police something important. He saw a man under the Proctor Bridge. He was watching the girls. White, mid-20s, thin build, a torn denim jacket, dirty white shoes. That man was never identified. Around 1:30 that afternoon, someone else saw Michella. She was near the edge of the gulch. She was talking to a man. He seemed to be pointing down a trail, possibly Hispanic, mid-20s to mid-30s, dark hair, light clothing. That was the last confirmed sighting of Michella Welch. When her sisters came back to the picnic table, the bag of sandwiches was still sitting there. Her bike was still chained to the rack. Michella was gone. The sisters had a special call between them, a signal just for the 3 of them. They used it now, into the trees. Nothing came back. They ran to their babysitter. The babysitter called Barbara at work. By 3:10 that afternoon, police were in the park. Puget Park sits above a steep, wooded gulch, thick brush, heavy tree cover, the kind of place that swallows sound whole. Officers searched the trails as daylight faded. Evening came. Flashlights moved through the brush in long lines. At 11:30 that night, more than 8 hours after police first arrived, a tracking dog pulled off the main trail into a hidden clearing, surrounded by brush so thick it was invisible from the path. That is where they found her. She had been sexually assaulted and beaten. A deep wound ran across her throat. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death blunt force trauma. Whoever did this had carried her far from the picnic table, more than a quarter-mile away. No one on the main trail would ever have found her. Only the dog did. Evidence was collected from the scene that night. It was sent to the state crime lab. In 1986, there was no way to use it yet. The technology to test it simply did not exist. So the evidence went into storage. It would sit there, untouched, for 20 years. News of Michella's murder spread through Tacoma fast. Parents who once let their kids walk to school now drove them instead. Kids who used to cut through the park started taking the long way around. A sketch of a suspect went out. The man under the bridge. It was printed and shared across the city. Nobody recognized him. A second sketch went out too. The man seen near the gulch. Nothing came of it either. Police searched every block near the park. Tips arrived by the hundreds, then by the thousands. A task force was formed. In the first year alone, they logged 10,000 hours. Every lead was followed. Every name was checked. None of it led to a suspect. Then, 5 months later, everything changed direction. It would stay changed for the next 30 years. August 4th, 1986, a 13-year-old girl named Jennifer Bastian left home. She rode her bicycle to Point Defiance Park. That park was 3 miles from Puget Park. She was training for a bike tour. She left a note. Home by 6:30, it said. She never came home. 3 weeks later, joggers found her body. She was hidden under a mound of sticks and leaves. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. 2 girls, both blonde, both young, both alone, on bicycles, in North Tacoma parks, 5 months apart. To detectives, the pattern felt too strong to ignore. They merged the 2 investigations into one task force. 1 killer, 2 victims. That became the working theory. For the next 30 years, it shaped every decision. Every suspect had to explain both murders. Every lead had to survive being checked against both crimes. If a man looked right for Michella's case, but had a clean alibi for Jennifer's murder, he got crossed off the list. This theory didn't just slow the investigation down, it reshaped the entire search. It made detectives hunt for one man, when really, they needed to find 2. Barbara had built something out of very little. A house, a job, piano lessons, small proof that life was finally okay. In one phone call, all of it broke apart. She now had 2 daughters instead of 3. Nicole was 9 years old that day. She stood at the edge of the gulch. She called out for her sister. She heard nothing answer back. She carried that silence for the rest of her life, into her 20s, her 30s, her 40s. Years later, after she had kids of her own, she said something simple and true. Watching her own children brought the memory back, sharp, immediate, as if no time had passed at all. Through the late 1980s, tips kept coming in. One name surfaced early, a man already convicted of killing a young girl in 1970. He had also escaped from prison once. Investigators looked hard at him. It didn't hold up. Other names came and went. Each one collapsed under the same test. Did this man fit both murders? By the early 1990s, the case had run out of road. The original detectives retired or moved to other units. New detectives inherited stacks of binders. They read through everything. They hit the same wall every time. Every real lead had already been used up. The evidence sat in storage. The binders sat on shelves. Angela grew up. Nicole grew up. Barbara eventually remarried. She moved out of state to Tennessee. The family scattered. the way families sometimes do, not because they stopped caring, but because the thing that broke them was also the thing they could never fully talk about. A relative once said this was the worst thing that ever happened to their family, a hole that nothing could ever fill. Another relative asked the only question that mattered. How is the man who did this still free? Nobody had an answer. Not yet. In 2006, 20 years after the murder, the crime lab finally built a full DNA profile. It came from the evidence at the scene. It was entered into the National Criminal Database. More than 11 million profiles were checked. No match came back. The profile was clean. It was complete. It pointed to exactly one person on Earth, but that person had never been arrested before. He had never given his DNA to any system. In every database that existed, he was a ghost. In 2013, everything moved at once, in two completely different directions. First, detectives tested Jennifer Bastian's swimsuit. Male DNA was found on it. They compared it to the DNA from Michella's case. It did not match. Two different men, not one killer. 30 years of work had been built on one idea. A single lab test destroyed that idea in an instant. Second, a detective named Lindsay Wade joined the cold case unit. Wade had grown up in Tacoma. She was 11 years old in 1986, old enough to remember when parks stopped feeling safe. In high school, she read a book about Ted Bundy, another killer with roots in Tacoma. It planted something in her. She wanted to catch people like him. She moved through the department for years. Patrol, narcotics, detective. Eventually, the cold case unit brought her in. Her boss later said he saw something in her, a kind of grit, the will to keep pushing when others would stop. Wade opened every binder from both investigations. She built a list of every male name involved, witnesses, tipsters, persons of interest, anyone mentioned across 3 decades of paperwork. The list came to 2,300 names. The killer was one of them. She just didn't know which one yet. In 2016, Wade tried something new. A private lab could now predict a face from DNA. No photograph, no sketch from memory, just genetic code turned into probability, skin tone, eye color, hair color, the rough shape of a face. The prediction for Michella's killer was specific: fair skin, brown eyes, brown hair, mostly Northern European with a small trace of something else. These computer-built faces were released to the public. Tips poured in. None of them held up. Wade narrowed her list down to a few hundred names. Then she started something slow and difficult. She asked men, one at a time, for a DNA sample. 160 men agreed. The samples went to the lab in batches. Batch after batch came back clean, no match. One name had been on her list since 1986, a man named Robert Washburn. Back then, he had called police himself. He said he saw a man matching the sketch. He said he'd been jogging in Point Defiance Park. He was interviewed, noted, and filed away. He stayed on the list for 2 reasons: that phone call from 1986 and a possible family link found decades later. In April 2018, Lindsay Wade retired. Before she left, she submitted 18 final samples. She didn't expect any of them to match. She had watched over 150 names clear already. Days after she left the department, she got a call. One of those 18 samples had matched, not to Michella's case, to Jennifer's. The name was Robert Washburn, the same man who called police in 1986, had killed Jennifer Bastian 5 months after Michella died. He had inserted himself into one investigation while hiding the truth about a second murder. Washburn pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 27 years. Jennifer Bastian's case was closed. Michella's case was still open, but something bigger had already been quietly moving. In February 2017, over a year before Wade retired, she began working with a genetic expert. Her name was Barbara Ray Venter. This same scientist would later help solve a famous cold case, the Golden State Killer, identified later that same year. The method was new. Almost nobody had used it on a case this old. Michella's killer had never given DNA to any police database. He had simply never been arrested for anything serious. But DNA doesn't just belong to one person, it belongs to an entire family tree. Ray Venter uploaded the DNA to a public ancestry site, the kind of site regular people use for fun, to trace their roots, to find long-lost relatives. The search didn't return the killer directly. It returned his relatives instead, second cousins, third cousins. People with no idea they shared his DNA at all. From these partial matches, experts built family trees. They traced lines back to shared ancestors. Then they followed every branch forward again, name by name, generation by generation. The tree kept narrowing. Eventually, it pointed to two brothers. Both had lived in North Tacoma back in 1986. Both were still alive. In May 2018, a second lab confirmed the result. Two brothers, both in the right place, at the right time. Detectives quietly began watching both men. Detective Steve Riepel followed one of the brothers for weeks. He was watching, waiting, looking for one ordinary moment, a moment that could give them real proof. On June 5th, 2018, the man went to work. Afterward, he stopped for breakfast with a coworker. He sat down, he ordered food, he ate. He wiped his mouth on a paper napkin. He left it on the table. Detective Riepel collected that napkin. He sent it straight to the crime lab. The DNA on it matched the DNA from Michella's case, the same DNA collected 32 years earlier. In the days before that result came back, while detectives quietly watched him, the man sensed something was wrong. He told a coworker something strange. He said that 30 years ago, he did something terrible. He believed he had finally been found out. He was 66 years old. He had lived in the same county his whole life. In 1986, he lived less than 2 miles from the park. 3 years after Michella's murder, he got sober. By 1998, he became a licensed nurse. He was hired at a state psychiatric hospital nearby. His job was helping discharged patients rebuild their lives. He held that job for more than 20 years, not one mark on his record. He married 3 times. He lived by a lake with his third wife. He collected old cars. He drove them through his neighborhood on weekends. Neighbors called him friendly, cordial, completely normal. A nurse who knew him for years said something haunting. She always felt something was off about him. She could never say exactly what. If she had guessed, she said, she'd have guessed small, maybe an affair. Nothing like this. She said she couldn't understand how someone carries this and still works in a job built on caring for people. His name was Gary Charles Hartman. He had never appeared in the case file before, not as a suspect, not as a person of interest. Not once, in 32 years, across thousands of pages. He had lived quietly in the same county the whole time, working a career built on helping damaged people, while a family 3 miles away waited for an answer. On June 20th, 2018, police pulled him over. It was a routine traffic stop. He was taken into custody right there. He was charged with murder and rape. Bail was set at $5 million. He pleaded not guilty. For years, he held on to that plea. His lawyer later told the court something hard to picture. Hartman's mind had fractured so badly back in 1986 that he buried the memory of what he did. He convinced himself, for decades, it never happened. Then, inside the county jail, something changed. In his own lawyer's words, he finally woke up. He understood, fully, what he had done. The trial came on March 22, 2022, 36 years after Michella Welch died. Hartman asked for a bench trial. No jury, just a judge. He was 70 years old. He walked into court using a walker. By this point, both sides agreed on almost everything. The prosecutor told the court something striking. She believed he had done everything but formally confess. The entire trial lasted less than 2 hours. Judge Stanley Rumbaugh delivered the verdict. Guilty. He sentenced Hartman to 320 months. That's 26 years and 6 months, the maximum the law allowed for a crime from 1986. Then the judge looked straight at Hartman. He said what the case demanded. Whatever Hartman's life became after that day, none of it could soften what he did. There were no excuses for this crime. This was one of the worst crimes that court had seen. Hartman put his head in his hands. As Michella's family spoke, his sobbing grew louder. Barbara had flown in from Tennessee. She hadn't lived in Tacoma in years, but she never once let go of this case. She stood in front of the man who killed her daughter. She said the words 36 years had earned her. Lock him up. Throw away the key. He would pay the price now. It would never bring her daughter back, but justice would finally be served. Then Nicole stood up, the little sister who was 9 in that park, the one who called into the trees, the one who heard nothing answer. She looked at Gary Hartman. She said something almost no one expected. She said that through her faith, she chose to forgive him. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, she said. It meant remembering without carrying the pain anymore. Gary Hartman is now held in a prison in eastern Washington. The judge said it plainly. He will likely die there. After both cases closed, Hartman for Michella, Washburn for Jennifer, something remarkable happened. Both families worked with Lindsay Wade. They helped change the law in Washington state. The bill passed in 2019. It's called Jennifer and Michella's Law. It requires DNA collection from certain convicted offenders. It even allows samples from offenders who have already died. It was written to close the exact gap that let these men hide for over 30 years, with no trace in any system. Here is the lesson underneath all of it. For 3 decades, this case followed one assumption: 1 killer, 2 girls. It felt logical, it felt tidy, and it was wrong. Sometimes the story that seems most obvious is the one most worth questioning. Not because obvious answers are always false, but because unearned certainty can become a wall instead of a map. Michella Welch got justice because one detective did something hard. She threw out 30 years of assumptions. She started over with 2,300 names and an open mind. If this case stayed with you, you're not alone. If you want more stories like this one, cases that took decades to crack, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you then.